Hi, this is Stephanie Wilson, and this is Lady, my off the track thoroughbred. I wanted to share with you where our story began. I adopted her from Second Stride when she was 3 years old. This picture was taken about 6 months after I adopted her. She ended up needing some surgery when I bought her, and so we had kind of a long rehab period before I could really start her under saddle. She gave me a lot of time to um, bond with her and really get to know her. My goal is to have you join with me in this journey as I bring her along. But I think in order to do that, it might help to give you some background about me. I was a totally lucky kid. My mom was into horses, and I was riding horses before I could walk. This is a picture of me on the left with my very first horse of my own, Chucky, who was a yard high, and he was a Shetland pony who was just a great little horse that would follow anybody in front of him. I have not a lot of memories of him, but some of my favorite memories were that we used to take him to shows in a cargo van, and it was like an empty cargo van that didn't have anything in it, and somehow we would get him into the back. We would stand him on cardboard in case he pooped, and it was my job to hold him. So I would sit in the passenger seat with my seatbelt on and feed him Doritos. So anybody driving up on us would see my mom driving and me in the passenger seat and a horse head stuck in the middle, which about caused a lot of accidents. But it was a lot of fun. He was a great pony. When I outgrew Chucky and he was off to his next little human, we bought Frosty, who unfortunately didn't live very long. I only had her for a couple of months, but she was a lot of fun while we had her. For the next several years, I had Rebel, who was just a great safe horse for a kid. I have visions of uh, climbing on him bareback with no halter or bridle out in the pasture and making him gallop, and I would steer him by his ears, the poor old guy. He was just a great horse. With Rebel, I started doing Western pleasure shows. He wasn't the most athletic guy in the world. He never did very well, but he was good to me. Um, Eventually, we moved to Dallas and we moved to a hunter jumper barn, and I tried him at jumping, and he really just was not athletic enough to do a whole lot. Um, and about that time, my mom actually got a job in Germany, and I ended up, I think I was 11 or 12. We moved to Germany, and I started riding at a German riding school there for a while, and we ended up finding a horse to buy. This is Grand Prix, and I'm guessing I'm 14, 15 years old when we purchased him. It's a very beautiful horse. My recollection is that he was actually a Grand Prix jumper, but he was too hot, which should have been telling for us. He is a very nice athletic horse, but honestly, way too much for my mother and I. We ended up keeping him at our house for a while. He had a sheep as a buddy, and then he had a pony, a halflinger pony as a buddy. Um, but he was a little more than I could handle. I didn't have anybody to ride with, and eventually I rode him some, but about that time I got into boys and not so much into horses. So I didn't ride him a ton. After that, I went to college and started at KU in Lawrence, Kansas, and at some point decided I needed to get back into horses again. It was in a car accident when I was 17 and broke my hand, and I believe I got a $1,700 settlement check from that accident. And it was the first time and the most money I'd ever been given. And I was a freshman in college, and I took that money and I went straight out and I bought a 2-year-old thoroughbred right off the track. So that was my start of my racetrack thoroughbreds. And this is a picture of Zach, who was my first off the track thoroughbred. I was a broke college kid and could not really afford to have horses. So the way I supported my horse habit is I would buy thoroughbreds off the track, keep them for a year, year and a half until they were suitably rideable by the average rider, sell them, take the profits, and buy another one and do it all over again. I kept doing that until I decided what I really wanted was a warm blood. And I kept doing that until I saved up enough money to buy a yearling warm blood. For a time, I was a groom at the local racetrack and got to know some people that way. This is a picture of Zeus, who's a horse that I didn't claim him, but I went to look at him. There was a couple who were women who owned him. One of them really loved him. The other one thought he wasn't a very good racehorse. They were kind of on the fence about whether they wanted to sell him. And I remember watching him run his last race, and it was muddy. And they wanted to see how he ran before they decided whether they would sell him to me. And he hated the mud. And that poor horse, he ran probably 3 lengths behind the last horse with his head straight up in the air the whole time. And the jockey was just trying to keep him going. And he just would not have any part of it. So they agreed to sell him to me. And I have to say, he was the most difficult horse that I restarted. He was the most anxious and the least broke. It was amazing to me when I got him that and sat on him for the first time. You could not put your legs on that horse at all. He had no idea what they meant, and he would just take off. It took a lot of work to settle this guy down. And this is I don't have very many pictures of him, but this was a picture of me with the coolest older woman. She was in her 80s at the time. She's on a 3-year-old quarter horse, and she was maintaining the trails. She owned the barn where I kept him for a while, and it was hilarious because her quiet 3-year-old would just sit there, and she would let that horse eat poison ivy, and she would trim the branches to keep the trails fine. And then I'm on this crazy horse in the background that every branch he hits, he's just having a conniption. He ended up being a really nice horse. I probably spent a year and a half on him before I sold him to a trainer who he ended up, I think, on the hunter circuit, on the A circuit at some point. But so he ended up being a nice horse. But he was my last thoroughbred, and when he went for a while, I was like, a good riddance, and I moved on to warm bloods. This is my heart horse, Rain Man. He was a Holsteiner that I bought as a yearling and raised him and had a ton of fun with him. He's the horse that took me the furthest by far. This picture, I hardly have any pictures of him. I don't know where they went, but this is a picture that was taken during one of my regular lessons with Becky Holder. She used to be Becky Douglas, but I rode with her for quite a while. She's a 2-time Olympian now, but that was taken before she went to her first Olympics. So I had a ton of fun riding with her, and then I ended up doing dressage with him. And meanwhile, I started breeding warm bloods and bringing along warm bloods and starting warm bloods, and I got Rain Man we were competing at 2nd level dressage and working on 3rd level, and his hocks started giving out, and I ended up just getting burnt out. Up until the 2nd level of training, I had a lot of fun with Rain Man, but after that, it just started getting hard for him. It stopped being fun. The training was really hard work. And I had this picture in my head. I'd had it my whole life. The further up the levels you went, the more fun you had. And I got frustrated with the process. It was too hard on the horse. And eventually I ended up getting burnt out. I got divorced, and I decided to get out of horses. So I got out of horses for many years. And then my daughter she was, I guess, 12 at the time. She's 13 now, but she, coming out of the pandemic, she just had a lot of anxiety and was really having a hard time getting out and doing things. So I kind of drug her kicking and screaming almost to a local barn to start riding. But she fell in love with it and started taking lessons and really got into it. And I decided, well, if she's going to get back in, if she's going to get into horses, then maybe I should get back into it too. So I took probably a handful of rides on a lesson horse that I just, an old thoroughbred, who was a really nice, kind guy, and decided, well, if I'm gonna do this, I'd like to have a horse of my own. And as much as I loved all of the warm bloods that I had, I found I actually missed the thoroughbreds. There's nothing like a good thoroughbred. Their personalities are just completely unique. So I decided I would give another thoroughbred a go and found Lady. My goal in sharing this journey with you is for hopefully you'll get something out of it. And I feel like if you have some background about me, that will help. I mean, I am by no means an advanced writer. Have I had more writing in my experience than most people? Yes, probably, but I'm not an upper level writer. I haven't trained thousands of horses or hundreds of horses, but I've trained dozens, but it's been some time. And so I think I'm hoping that by watching somebody else who's somewhat of an amateur through this process, you may learn bits and pieces about what to do, about what not to do. So I do hope you'll join me on this journey. So I'm going to end this with a little bit of a clip of her coming off the trailer when she came to join me and our journey together started. Thanks for watching.
Look at her.
There we go, it's all yours.